Hearing if you're a member of the public and if you would like to speak regarding ordinance number 1246, which is regarding the 2026 fiscal year's budget, please approach the podium.
My name is Eric Sanner, and I'm a resident of the county, and I represent as vice chairman of the recently formed Dorchester Temporary Shelter. This shelter was formed this past year to address an ever-increasing number of homeless people here in Dorchester County, in the city specifically. And we successfully raised from the public in this town, in this county, more than $100,000 this past year to support the shelter. We spent all that money on the needs that we were addressing, including primarily safe shelter, getting people off the streets, keeping them alive. An important part of our go-forward plan is to maintain the shelter, raising additional funds from the public. And we understand that the proposed budget from the city includes, I believe, $25,000 to support this shelter for the good of the citizens and for the safety of those people that need the shelter. And I fully support and ask that the council also support that and keep that $25,000 in the proposed budget.
Currently, that homeless shelter exists at the Salvation Army. Those that stay there have to exit the shelter during the day. Has there been thought or consideration given to provide those individuals with supports needed in order to find employment, in order to learn how to budget, to be able to find housing, and to really provide that transitional support needed to get them into stable housing from the shelter?
The intent is through our partners at Dorchester or Delmarva Community Services and others, we are connecting those residents with mental health support, medical support, and other services. We just submitted a grant request today to the state of Maryland, which would help provide support for addiction services and for transportation, bicycles, so that they can get to medical appointments, they can get to mental health appointments, and they can get to jobs. From a success standpoint, together with our partners at Delmarva Community Services, we housed on a permanent basis 22 people this past year that were previously unhoused.
So that $25,000, does it go right to your organization or to Delmarva Community Services?
We are partnered with Delmarva Community Services, and so logistically the money will go to DCS on our behalf, and it will go toward meeting the needs of the shelter, which are primarily providing staff, so that staff are there all the time that the shelter is open.
In previous conversation, it was described that admission to the shelter, the terminology that was used was low barrier. And I think that creates a certain amount of concern if there are small children and other individuals being housed, when certain individuals who may not be under their, control, their own personal control due to substance, due to any other, that is there some, how are there options to, protect those who are in there from someone who may not be thinking clearly based on their position? Or does anybody just get in at any time?
The intent, ideally we wouldn't have unhoused people, but we do. So the next ideal is that we would be able to house men and women and families in 3 distinct places. We don't have that luxury today. So we do the best we can in getting people off the street, and so they're safe. We have permanent staff there to address those kinds of issues as best we can at this moment.
But right now, there's no separation amongst the population.
There's separate rooms within the shelter building at the existing shelter building.
The current building can only house one family. There is a men's section which is much larger than the women's section. This past winter, because we had so many families coming in, the informal organization that was operating more at that point chose, to put people in a hotel here in the county until they could be transitioned into more permanent housing. A lot of those folks, just so from the hotel, were working families. They just could not afford a place to live. And then you will have those occasional circumstances where maybe one of the parents has had some issues, and the family may not be able to get into a high barrier shelter, and it gets into a lot of challenges. Does the family walk away because they're supportive of the one parent? That's why, as I said, that's why the low barrier shelter approach was taken. Just so you also know, the county has stepped up significantly. The county provided a truck for keeping food and frozen and taken care of. And then the county health department had operations where I think the original question, what was being done to help the individuals, to get them the medical help, the psychological help that they need to get them into more permanent housing. I think the one success that was, we had a 78-year-old man who had not been inside a house or apartment for 10 years. And, anybody, that's quite a challenge when you take someone who's used to living outside and putting them into a place with ceilings and walls and everything else. It takes an adjustment. The city has nothing to do with that. That is all through Delmarva Community Services. The decision last year was by the previous council was to give the money to Delmarva Community Services because frankly we were operating on the fly. Fortunately, our money came in first, which helped get the shelter permit. The state came in. I don't want to pick on the state, but they didn't get their money in until almost when it was time to close the shelter. They are operating year-round.
You talk about community involvement. So almost all of the meals, the evening meals, are provided by the community. Every night, a family or a group of friends comes together and makes a meal to serve. During the winter, it was up to 70 people. Now it's about 20 people every night.
Was the intent always that it would go to DCS, or was that not the intent? I didn't see that in the budget.
Well, they in the past couple of months have been trying to set up a nonprofit. The purpose of creating a nonprofit, it makes them more eligible for other types of grants and loans. In the meetings that I've attended, they're anticipating it's going to cost close to $250,000 without food. I think that's important. It was about $250,000. The community, some groups have been giving weekly, some groups for the first, month they were open were given 5 times a week. And then there are times when the shelter does operate in the winter. They don't put people out on the street. They keep them inside so they have a safe place to be in extreme weather. And then there's another group working with this group. on, heat and cold, extreme heat and extreme cold temperatures. I just go and attend, but we've not made any promises or commitment as the city manager. The only thing I've ever said was we were putting in 25,000. Obviously the council has to approve it. And eventually it would be nice that the city is not as part of this, that the nonprofit's going to be able to raise money. I mean, they've raised money. Just so you know, the money has come through the Elks on Pine Street. I think they gave $10,000. I believe one of the foundations, I won't name names, one of the foundations has given money. Their goal is to become ultimately self-sufficient. And, I put in $25,000 to help them get to that level.
I received more emails on this than anything else. And my thoughts on it, just to pass on to my fellow commissioners, is it's definitely an issue in our community. It's throughout the nation. I do think there needs to be a distinction between homeless and mental health issues. And I myself am most interested in supporting residents of the city of Cambridge who have fallen on hard economic times. And so I would like to see, if we support homeless families or individuals, that it be a priority placed on those that are residents for the past year or some period of time in the city of Cambridge. They've fallen on hard economic times, and we place a priority on families first and then individuals, so that they have shelter until they can get back up on their feet.
I guess the question I have is, hearing the success that you all had last year and hearing what City Manager Mr. Stackman has shared, that some of these individuals have found themselves in situations where they have experienced economic hardships. So getting them back housed, are you all still providing support to those individuals that are housed, even if it's just a simple check-in to ensure that before, if they ever fall in a situation where they would lose their housing again, if there's any prevention that could take place, you would be kind of the first go-to for that family?
Absolutely. Probably all of you know Valerie Davis. Mm-hmm. So Valerie is the point person, and she provides case management not only virtually every night at the shelter to those that come in, but for those that she hasn't gotten in yet, and those that have transitioned to some level of permanent housing, because they need, to your point, just getting in the house, that doesn't solve all their problems, usually, right? Because there's economic needs, there's mental health needs, there's medical needs, there's physical needs. So yes, she and others, through DCS primarily, and then through other partners, Midshore Behavioral Health and the like, to help them on a continuous basis.
Thank you for your contribution and all that you guys are doing, but I am not saying let's give money to just let people stay homeless, but let's give money to an organization that's trying to help these individuals get back on their feet and looking at the holistic picture versus just, you're homeless, you don't have to do anything, stay here, we'll fund the program. That's not, in my opinion, what they're trying to do.
DCS also is providing payroll services, and that's where DCS wants to move in that direction. They'll provide payroll services and accounting services as part of their mission at Valerie Davis, but they're not wanting to operate the shelter itself.